The topic is feeling, the prime mover in spiritual development. And people too often try to intellectualize the spiritual path and avoid this idea of working with feeling, with positive emotions, with negative emotions. And they start asking, what is moksha? What is self-realization and liberation from an intellectual level? What is the difference between nirvikalpa, sabhikalpa, samadhi, and all these different things? And it comes from this idea, perhaps, that divine freedom is something that is an idea. If I can just figure it out in my head and in my mind, I can get there. And we're used to figuring things out in this day and age. And all the exams and tests that we're given growing up in school, it's all about figuring it out. And this reading is based on, or this topic is something that Swami Kriyanandaji wrote. He said that understanding begins not in the head, but in the heart. Feeling more than reason is the motivating force in every endeavor. And feeling in the form of devotion is the prime mover in spiritual development. So in some ways, this is actually the higher mathematics of the spiritual path, is this understanding of working with feeling. Because understanding in the spiritual path and in terms of enlightenment and understanding, knowing God, it's not in the head, it's only in the heart. When Yoganandaji described his experience of samadhi, of cosmic consciousness, in Autobiography of a Yogi, he said that he cognized the Empyrean. He understood and saw the entire universe from a single point of intuitive perception in the heart. This is where we understand truth, truly, divine truth is in the heart. And so devotion, working with this feeling energy, is the most important thing. It's not just the most important thing, it's essential. And to show you how it really is the only thing in the end. One time a friend of mine here in India, she asked Swamiji at a satsang, which is more important, bhakti or mukti? Bhakti, devotion, or mukti, moksha, liberation, which is more important? And Swamiji just got this very beautiful smile on his face. This was near the end of his life, when perhaps he had moksha already, to be honest. But even then, he just got the very sweet smile. And he said, "This is what my guru taught me." And then he began singing this beautiful song in Bengali of Yogananda's, of a chant or a song. And he couldn't even finish the song. The tears started flowing and he just couldn't complete the song. And the English words are Divine Mother speaking to her child, to the devotee, saying, "O devotee, I can give thee salvation, but not my love and devotion. For when I give these away, I become poor. Ask of me salvation, but not my love and devotion." And she, according to Master, to Swamiji, what Divine Mother was really saying is that when I give my love and when I give you devotion, when I awaken that within you, you have all of me. That's the most valuable part. It's really what you want. Salvation, yeah, you can be free on some astral plane and have some freedom. But if you don't have this feeling of divine love, but also divine bliss, because divine bliss is a feeling. It's a feeling of joy. It's not an idea. It's not an intellectual concept. And this is why Swamiji said God is feeling. So feeling is the prime mover on the spiritual path. Unfortunately, you could say, I don't know if it's unfortunate, it's just a reality, but it also is the prime mover towards delusion, that same feeling energy, because it's just the feeling energy that we're trying to work with. It's the greatest obstacle, but it's also what is required for liberation. And so we need to learn how to work with it. And this reading so beautifully puts it. It doesn't say that, liberation comes when we get the chakras all fixed up and we work with the chakras and the kundalini and all the different channels and the nadis and the different aspects of yoga, which can get a little too intellectual. But this reading gets into the real heart of the matter, literally and figuratively, which is that delusion comes from restlessness. Swamiji says, restlessness is agitated feeling. Again, coming back to this feeling energy of the heart. The wish that things were other than they are is another feeling. It's a desire. Desire binds us. One time somebody asked Yoganandaji, what keeps us reincarnating again and again? And we think of it as karma. I come back to work out karma. And no. Yoganandaji said, it's desire. It's only desire that keeps us coming back. It's a desire for things to be a certain way and certain sense attachments and for fame or for material gain. All these things that can only be fulfilled here on earth have us coming back again and again. So desires bind us, likes and dislikes regarding people and things. This is so important, likes and dislikes. And so when we dissolve these foreign elements, because they aren't the salt of the ocean, when we transform or transmute all of these different very human feeling aspects, then they get transmuted and transformed through and into the salt of devotion, where we can merge back into God. And this aspect of working with feeling as the prime mover on the spiritual path in the form of devotion, it's not even optional. It's something that we must learn how to do. And so we must learn how to get comfortable working with this feeling aspect. And it's a challenge because we're used to failing on the feeling aspect by giving into anger and emotions, and we fall in love and we are hurt. And so the feelings, we get used to the idea that this feeling energy harms us and hurts us. Different people work with it in different ways. This feeling energy can also be enjoyable in a very downpulling sense. But in the end, it's all about direction. When that feeling energy is directed upwards towards God, that very simply is devotion. When the feeling energy is pulling us down, or we're indulging in the feelings, then that is human emotion. It's again desire, attachment, wishing that things were one way or the other, restlessness, agitation of the heart. And so all these things are just a reality that we have to deal with. This is why just intellectually asking these questions about samadhi and moksha and liberation, it's good, it's fine, helpful to understand where we are trying to go with ourselves. But we also have to accept where we are. And where we are starting from a human level. And so we are trying to work with human feeling, which tends to be more downpulling and drawing us out into human desire, attachment, all these things. And it's the prime mover. Feeling is the prime mover in delusion also. And so we have to learn how to work with it and just simply redirect it. And it's so simple. It's simply about getting in the habit, getting in this flow of a different direction of the feeling energy. And this is the beauty of the techniques of meditation, because all the practices that we do work with feeling and redirecting it in two ways. One is when we practice a technique like the Hong Sau technique and other breathing practices, it calms the agitated feeling. It doesn't kill feeling, it just makes it calmer and less restless and less agitated and disturbed. It's just like calming the waves on a pond that has a lot of ripples from the wind. It just calms that energy, that feeling energy. And then practices like devotional self-offering, japa, practicing the presence of God, but also techniques like Kriya Yoga, which really very powerfully use the will, the concentration, combined with devotion to redirect that energy upwards up to the spiritual eye. And so really, when we work with human feeling, just find some way of not either, see, some yogis repress that feeling. They say, I'm a yogi, I'm spiritual, so this desire or anger or fear that I'm feeling, I'm a yogi, I'm not really feeling that. And they push it aside. And this doesn't work because that just ends up repressing the very thing that's going to liberate us, which is this feeling aspect. And you'll see, it's because I've been practicing these things for so many years, and I've been so close to many people who work with these things. There's this impression sometimes that even like an advanced yogi or someone who's been doing these things for many years, that they have no human emotion or feeling. They have no fear, for example. But, until we're liberated, we do go through this. And it's an interesting time because this whole thing with a pandemic, with economy, with lockdown, with stress of being enclosed, with people and all these things, it's awakening a lot of feeling energy that's always been there. It's not, if you're feeling agitated, disturbed, fearful, and these things happen. I mean, we've all gone through it. I have gone through it at times. It's not something that you transcend until you become fully liberated. And you think that these things are because of what's happening out there, because of pandemic, because of the stress, because of what other people are going through. But it's not. It's simply this feeling of the heart energy. And so once we accept that and recognize it, we can start to work with it. And so when we have fear, for example, rather than denying it or saying, I'm supposed to be spiritual, I see my acharyas, they don't have fear. But let me tell you a truth, that many yogis who have been doing this for Ananda people, great souls, we go through tests and challenges of working with emotion. I've told the story sometimes of my wife, Maria. She left the body about 10 years ago, and she was a great Kriya yogi. She practiced a whole lifetime of self-offering and devotion, Guru Seva, Kriya Yoga. But she still had a fear that was very intense and very strong. And she had been fighting cancer for 10 years. And she had a fear of dying from cancer. It just was an irrational thing, but it was there. And rather than, I'm supposed to be spiritual, this is not a good thing to have, and rather than trying to push it aside, she was self-honest, worked with it. And even a year before her passing, she wrote an email to Swami Kriyanandaji. And she was very honest and open about herself, what she was going through. She said, Swamiji, I've been practicing these things all my life. I've done my best. I still have this fear. I just cannot overcome it. And I need your help. Guide me, help me with this. And this is a type of self-honesty and openness and introspection without judging oneself. She wasn't judging herself. She just understood, I don't like this. I know it's binding to me, but I can't get over it. Please help me. And so Swamiji just wrote her, and he just said very simply, he said, you've died 1,000,000 times in past lifetimes. When it happens, when it comes, which is inevitable in this life, you will find that it's very natural and familiar, and that you will be in great joy and great freedom. So don't worry about these little things, is the way he put it. And then he said, it's just like going into the next room. That's really what it's like. So our power just went out here. So I'm going to have to either adjust my lighting or just keep going in the slight darkness like this, which I think I will do it like this. So what Swamiji was saying also is that he gave her some grace. He gave her some power, I think, because when we turn towards God with devotion, with trust, with childlike trust and faith, then what we find is that we really open ourselves up to the power of divine grace. And that grace can really help free us and help to liberate us. So in this process of working with feeling as the prime mover in spiritual development, understand that it's a process of redirecting energy, and that yes, we start from having fear. There's a beautiful chant of Swamiji's, "When I awake," and it's a chant to the Divine Mother. "When I awake, I'll see thy face. When I awake, I'll see thy light. Mother, awake me from my dreams. Mother, awake me in thy light. Hand in hand, dancing together in thy light." And it also includes, "When I awake, I'll end all sorrows. When I awake, I'll know thy joy." And sorrow and joy, this is really, Swamiji's again, he's saying, I'm a child of God, I'm human, I have sorrow. And by offering myself with devotion into your light, this is how I transcend and turn those elements and dissolve them, turn them into the salt of devotion. And sorrow and grief becomes divine bliss and joy. And the other line, "When I awake, I'll end all fear. And when I awake, I will know thy love." And so again, the way that fear is dissolved is through love, through offering ourselves in devotion. Fear is very simply an agitation of the heart, a feeling of the heart. And it's very interesting that so many saints throughout the ages have said that the opposite of fear, Swamiji said this more than once, opposite of fear is love. We don't think of that, do we? We think that the opposite of fear is courage and that kind of a quality. But he said the opposite of fear is love. The antidote to fear and these other human emotions is love. Because when we practice love, self-giving, self-offering, and devotion, then we redirect this flow of energy. And again, feeling is the prime moving force in our own bondage and delusion, but also in our liberation, in our spiritual development. And so learning how to get a hold of, get comfortable with even our human feelings, fear, grief, sorrow, rather than denying it and saying, well, I'm spiritual, I'm supposed to be a yogi. Because let's face it, even Yoganandaji, when he lost his most closest disciple in many ways, inwardly close, not outwardly, but Sister Gyanamata, at his funeral, at her funeral in the astral ascension ceremony, he wept tears because he also had a human heart. And yeah, he could have said, oh, I know she's free and, we shouldn't get caught up in these things. But he wept very human tears. And so at the same time, of course, he gave those tears of God, bathing God with our tears of devotion, but even with our tears of fear, of sorrow, sadness, with our grief. And so this, again, this is the way out of delusion, is to really work with, on a regular basis, with this feeling energy. And over time, especially this aspect of devotional offering to God. Because in a way, we don't always have to work directly with our qualities of fear or grief or sorrow. You'll find that, yes, we have to be aware of them and not suppress or deny them. But even those very things, if you offer them to God in this flow of devotional self-offering, you will find that, again, they are transformed. The human emotions and feelings are transformed into the salt of pure devotion. And all this restlessness, this likes and dislikes, these wishes for things to be one way or the other, all these things become dissolved in divine bliss, divine joy, divine freedom, in divine love. The other aspect of working with devotion is that these two feeling aspects of God are devotion and bliss. And Swamiji wrote that love is the first step towards divine bliss. It's the first manifestation of divine bliss because it's a feeling energy. And when we feeling energy as devotion, we start to tune into this higher aspect of divine feeling, which is divine bliss, because ultimately that's who and what we really are. We are none of these other things. We are not this body. We are Satchidanandam. And when we practice these things regularly, very naturally, over time, these lower feelings are transmuted and transformed into this higher feeling of divine devotion. And when we practice, especially devotional self-offering, do this not just during meditation. Do it at all times if you can. Make it just a main practice that you do every day. And that means, for those of you who practice Kriya Yoga, do it, as Swamiji says, as an act of devotional self-offering. Because when you offer yourself with intense devotion, with energy, with will, with all of our life force, and offer ourselves completely giving, not just as an act of will, but as an act of just giving ourselves with love and giving, just as a child giving to the mother. And just act in that way, even be almost a very childlike technique when it's done with this complete trust and self-offering. And then when we practice Kriya in that way, it starts to develop a different flow of energy. It starts to make this inward and upward flow more and more strong when we do Kriya every day. And then it starts to touch other aspects of our life. And then it becomes easier to practice that devotional giving and offering to others as we are serving them, in our thoughts as we are just going through the day, cooking a meal, cooking that meal as a devotional offering for Krishna or for Divine Mother, through our family, for example. All these things, when they add up over time, when we practice them repeatedly over time, it starts to change the flow of energy to this devotional, transforming salt of devotion. It also draws divine grace in the end, because we don't get there by ourselves. But when we start to live more in God, in a state of grace through this practice, then fears dissolve away. Even the most terrible fear or karma or emotional grief or sorrow or loss that you have that seems humanly impossible to transcend and release is lifted up in this flow of divine grace and devotion. So this is the beautiful reading and practice that the great saints and masters have given us. And so let's follow them in this way. And you'll find that even wisdom and understanding, intuition, knowing what decision to take during a time that we're in when sometimes we have very tough decisions to make, that we are more guided by divine feeling, which is intuition, than by human emotion, agitation, fear, desire, and attachment. So let's follow our great masters in this practice, making it an almost constant practice if you can, during the day, during meditation, during all of our practices, as you're going to sleep at night, as you're serving your family, raising your children, relating to our friends, to all people, to whether it's your servant or your cook or these people. Act in this sense of devotional giving and self-offering, and you will find that it's not just the quickest way to freedom. This aspect of working with feeling is the only way to freedom. And you'll find that when this gets developed more and more, then the passion and the desire for God starts to develop more and more. And then it becomes very easy. And this is why Swamiji said that bhakti is more important than mukti in the end. So may their grace guide us and bring us home. So we'll now have an arati, and I'll light the candle. And we'll have a chant as I do the arati. Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram.
Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Father, Mother, friend or God, we thy wonders all proclaim. Father, Mother, friend or God, we thy wonders all proclaim. Father, Mother, friend or God, we thy wonders all proclaim.
And you can receive this light to yourself, bring it up to your spiritual eye and offer it to yourself, and feel the light of God, the grace of God, entering us, changing us, transforming us. And let's close with a prayer. First, let's offer ourselves in service to all as instruments, doing a healing prayer for all those in need throughout the world, those who are suffering from sickness, from poverty, from despair, from anger, fear, all these qualities that bind us so strongly. Feel that Divine Mother is flowing through us. And let's pray together. Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all thy children. Manifest thy healing presence in all bodies, minds, and souls. Rub the hands together, chanting Om 3 times, sending healing grace to all. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, great masters, we bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, may thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion, and may we be able to awaken thy love in all hearts. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all. It's been a great joy spending time with you, and look forward to doing it again.